War. We call it that so we don't have to call it what it is. Killing human beings on a large scale. And when everything seems like it's falling apart and you're looking around but you don't know where to start, you can rise above with that one simple choice: choose love. And somewhere between something and nothing is where I am now, wanting to help and not knowing how. How to stop that man from shooting Trayvon Martin.
So stop looking for more unless you're looking in a mirror, because it's about time for you to see clearly that you are who you've been looking for.
What makes me different? I'm an artist.
My name is Adam Roa. I am a spoken word artist and a filmmaker, and I travel the world speaking about the art of choosing love.
I've been called a lot of things: thought leader, motivational speaker, poet, but the one I resonate most deeply with is artist.
Peta Vaughan here. Welcome to another episode of Vybez. I have the amazing Mr. Adam Roa here. Thank you for being here, being a part of this.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for coming to my house.
Yes,
I really appreciate that.
No, thank you for having us. We appreciate it. So, for people, we're just gonna dive in, right? For people that don't know who you are, can you tell a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I help people translate really esoteric, ancient wisdom concepts and translate those down into practical use for their lives. So what is the law of attraction and manifestation, and like how do we understand that and put that into practice in a way that makes sense for us? And what about like you want to go real deep in, like, what about quantum, like DNA activation and playing in this quantum field, and like all of these things that fascinate me, and being able to translate what those are and how I've applied them to my own life in ways that most other people could apply them to their life, I feel like is kind of a superpower that I have. And then I do that in so many different ways. Okay. So I do that through film work. As an actor, director, producer. I do that as an artist, as a spoken word artist. I do that through coaching, one-on-one or group programs or workshops. And then I do that through speaking, not just on stage somewhere, but like here,
right.
Or like this interview is something that I do,
right.
So that it goes out into the world and can spread my unique medicine.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's me.
Yes. Well, I have to say I'm a big fan of your work.
You've said that so many times. I really appreciate that.
I'm a huge fan. The Deep Dive podcast.
Oh yeah, I'm a podcast host. See? Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
I host the Deep Dive podcast,
yes.
which is one of my huge passions.
Yes.
I love that.
And I love it.
Thank you.
The material on there is just, it lifts and inspires, and it just does so many things for me personally.
Oh,
so
thank you.
I'm a huge fan.
Thank you so much.
Happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your back? Like, were we born? Were we raised? Family dynamics.
Do we have like 10 hours to talk about this?
Family dynamics. Yes.
Yeah, so I was born in Glendora, California.
Okay.
And then I grew up in California, Orange County, and then at the age of, or let's say 6th grade, we moved to Arizona. And junior high school, dating, college, like all of that was in Arizona. And then I moved back to Los Angeles to pursue a career in acting. And I've now spent most of my life actually in California. So my dad's from the Philippines.
All right.
And so he is your stereotypical Asian man, where it's like show no emotion, like do as I say, hit you with a belt if you disobey, like that sort of thing.
Okay.
And for me, growing up in that kind of dynamic, I have a younger brother and a younger sister, so I'm the oldest.
Okay.
And there was, like, my dad was my role model, and at a very early age, I started to take on this belief that showing emotions around him and family and everyone just wasn't a safe thing to do.
Yeah.
So my family dynamics were interesting because I felt so disconnected. There were so many walls up between my family and I, that I feel like I recently had this realization that you go through whatever you go through, and as you're developing, your family's there for all of it. Right?
Yeah.
And so they have an image of you, and that image of you gets reflected back to you consistently. And so it can be really hard to change that image when your whole family sees that image.
Right.
And so I didn't like who my family saw me to be, but when I didn't have the awareness and I didn't have the tool set to change who I was showing up as. So I would just continue to show up as this version of myself that didn't feel like me and didn't feel good to be. And then when I left the house, as soon as I left the house, I was this other person that everyone liked. And I was, you know what I mean? So it was just a different thing.
So then where did the awareness begin for you? Where you were like, okay, this is how my family sees me. This is how I am outside of the family dynamic. When did you connect the two?
That's a really good question. I think I'm gonna answer it in two parts because my general awareness started to really skyrocket at about 18.
Okay.
And that's because I accomplished something. I say accomplished, but like I got something that was so important to me at the time, and it didn't fulfill me. And I was like it flipped my world upside down. It's like, wait a second, they tell you that if you get these things that you're gonna be happy and and it didn't. And so I started asking all these questions and I started reading all these books and I started just like thinking like they're lying to me.
Can you tell us what that is? Can you share?
Yeah, sure. I won Homecoming King at my senior year of high school. And because I attribute a lot of this to my dad being from the Philippines and like coming here in pursuit of the American dream. And so like the idea of the house and the car and the dog and the 2.5 children, like that whole thing, the American dream is based on achievement and materialism.
Yes.
And the pursuit of achievement and materialism as happiness. And that seeped in so that at an early age, achievement, materialism. And in high school, you're like, what's the greatest achievement? Homecoming King. As like a small kid who was late to the puberty game and like late bloomer and had this Napoleon complex and all this stuff, I realized like Homecoming King, that means that like I made it.
Is that where the revelation came?
So the revelation came where literally the next day I woke up and I still had the feelings of like fear and anxiety and not enoughness. And I still had those feelings and I didn't even know that I thought that winning Homecoming King would get rid of them.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
And yet they didn't. And then I realized I thought this would be different. I thought I would wake up this morning and be different and I'm not.
Yeah.
And that experience caused me to go, well, what about everything else that I'm being told? Go get the career, go get the family, go get the 2.5 kids, and then you're gonna be happy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what if that's not true?
Yeah.
I'm not willing to invest 30 years and be 48, 50 years old and be like, wow, I'm not happy. And I've spent my entire life pursuing that.
Yeah.
And so from that moment, I immediately started just like searching. And everything from there started to change. And then this whole thing started with you asking me about when I had the revelations about the family dynamics.
Right.
I didn't know, so that's when I started searching and seeking out questions. And then ayahuasca brought in a spiritual component to my life that was never there before. And that spiritual component, from one day to the next, like being hit with, I believe in energy and I believe in a higher power and I believe we're all connected, like from one day to the next. And having that experience now gave me like a feeling of security in something greater than myself that allowed me to start asking the questions that I was afraid to ask before.
Okay. So you've spoken before on your podcast about 2 transformative moments in your life. Were those the two transformative moments?
Those are
for
the
you?
two. Those are the two major transformative moments in my life. And now I know you actually listen.
I do.
Those are the two major, most transformative moments in my life: was winning Homecoming King and not being fulfilled by it, and then ayahuasca.
And then so you started to seek out more knowledge on spirituality or growth or evolving?
Yes.
Yes.
So I have a personality where I don't like not being the best. And not even the best, but like being great.
Does that stem from being in that household with your Filipino dad, or no? That's just,
You know, that's
you
a
were born
really
with that.
interesting question.
Yeah.
I would say that that's probably I think I see everything. We live in a universe of polarity. And so everything, any part of yourself that, I'm gonna turn that around, any part of myself that I feel like I'm not happy with. There's say I have a temper, right? Or I have an anger problem. Well, that anger is serving in some way. It's there for a reason. And so you can work to release that and simultaneously know that it has served and appreciate the aspects that it has served. And so I think growing up with such high expectations for my family, like one of the things my dad used to say all the time was, I came to this country with nothing and have given you everything.
Right.
So you should be able to accomplish so much more than I did.
Okay.
And so that like mindset and recognizing those, hearing those expectations led to just such high expectations for myself.
Right.
And that also led to the other side of this competitiveness, where I used to, I could not lose at anything. Like I just couldn't. And so I took that same level of wanting to be great at something, and I legitimately put that into spirituality. When I found spirituality, when I felt this connection, I said, this is a whole different like view of life.
Yeah.
And I know nothing about it. And I just went 110% into it. I went down and started watching all of these things.
Yeah.
Esther Hicks and Law of Attraction and all of it, reading books, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, and I hired I hired my own coach, life coach, and started meditating, like all of that. After I found ayahuasca was at like 28, 29. And in that moment, it was like, I have a whole new belief system and I need to learn it. And I went to school and I spent 110% of my energy into it.
So that leads me to school. So you went to college.
I did. Arizona State University. Go Sun Devils. No, I don't think I've ever done that.
You got a
I
rep.
don't think I've ever done that. But
You got a rep. And so I know you're a personal trainer. What did you go to school to pursue?
So I got a degree in marketing.
So how did you end up doing personal training?
How did I end up doing personal training?
Yes.
Well, I thought that I loved advertising. Then I started going to school for advertising. I started working as an intern at an advertising agency, and I realized I don't love advertising. What I loved was performing. I loved pretending to be this and like performing. And so I started taking acting classes in college. And then finally, in an acting class, I made a really good friend who was like a mentor to me, who was a personal trainer. And he's like, you should come be a personal trainer.
So you did personal training while you were pursuing your acting career?
Correct. And then I had my own personal training business. So like I left, I didn't work. I started at like a 24-hour fitness.
Yeah.
And then I left and had my own business for many years. And until I became a coach, because all of my clients were calling me their life coach. So most personal trainers, the most common thing is like they have clients for about 3 to 6 months. And like people do some things and they move on and you just need to constantly refill. I trained the same people for 5 years, twice a week for 5 years. And so like that relationship, I started to recognize as they were calling me their life coach, they don't need me for exercise. You have P90X, you have YouTube, like no one needs a trainer to learn new exercises. You're actually hiring the trainer for what the trainer brings from a motivation, inspiration, and like conversation standpoint. And all our conversations were about like what people were going through, like wanting to quit their jobs and like all these things. And so I realized I was already coaching.
Yes.
And so that was that transition.
Right. Because there's always sort of like a spiritual component to wanting to be in better shape. I would think.
Well, there's the component of wanting to better your life.
Right.
Fully.
Yeah.
And the desire to
inside
better
out.
your
Yeah.
life and taking ownership of it and saying, I can better my life.
Yes.
Not waiting on something else to change. Like, that's the thing about going and exercising. You're not waiting on something outside of you to change you.
Yeah.
You are saying, I can do this. I can change my life. And so from that standpoint, it's very much about getting yourself empowered and in alignment.
Okay.
Fully.
So creativity. You do spoken word, and you do a lot of other creative things. Growing up, were you always creative? Were you like a artist or like?
No, you know what's funny? I actually always thought that I wasn't creative.
Okay.
My brother and sister I saw as the creative ones. I was the one who was good at math and who was very logical and analytical, good at school, could take tests, just like photographic memory, could just study the night before and ace the test, like that sort of thing. So I thought I was gonna be great in the business world and like own my own business and be an entrepreneur. I always thought I would be successful because we live in a paradigm that tells us that those skills are so much more important than the creative skills. And that's shifting. And it's shifting a lot, especially with this rise in like tech startups and like entrepreneurialism, where getting to create your businesses and the internet and empowering people. And yeah, for most of my life, even when I was an actor, I did not think that I was creative. Like I was an actor. And I am an actor, but that's separate from like the creatives are artists and like people who just think in poetry and like that sort of thing. Yeah, so it was a huge shift for me actually to embrace creativity, which is why I'm such an advocate for it now and why I teach it.
Okay. So how did that come about for you? When did you discover I'm actually creative? I'm going to be doing creative things and putting it out into the world.
Well, I think starting to direct film was a huge component of that. But the biggest shift around like even labeling myself as a creative type or an artist was when I started doing spoken word poetry. And that happened while I was at an event, and there were all these different speakers who would speak for like 5 to 7 minutes, and then at the very end, the last person to go was a spoken word artist. And he started his spoken word poetry, and the second he started, I stood up and I was like, I can do that.
Right.
Like, I don't know how. It was just this divine moment where I just knew I could do that. And you've heard some of my poetry.
Yes.
And you've been to the show.
I have.
So the opening poem of that about our thoughts are the results of our beliefs, which is online so people can listen to it. That is literally the first spoken word poetry piece I ever wrote.
Wow.
And I wrote it the day after hearing that person speak and thinking I can do that.
Wow.
And it's still a piece that like I perform.
Yeah.
It just started, just this alignment happened and it's like, whew, and then it just flows out. And so that was the starting point where I was like, oh my gosh, I have this creative ability. And then I was performing somewhere and they had on the board, they said, spoken word artist, Adam Roa. And it's the first time artist had ever been next to my name. And it created this shift in me. It was like, I'm gonna own that. I'm an artist.
Nice.
I'm an artist. Yeah.
So you just sat down and wrote that piece with the intention for it to just put it out into the world, or did you want to like keep it to yourself, or you just like, I'm just gonna write to see how creative I can be, or how did that evolve?
I just knew I could do it.
And then to the one-man show, like how did that even?
Yeah, how did that evolve? Well, I just started writing that piece because I was inspired to write, because I said I can do that spoken word poetry thing.
Yeah.
And I wrote it. And then I read it to my friends and they're like, wow. And my friend says, the next one you do should be, you are who you've been looking for. I was like, okay.
All right.
And within 24 hours had written that piece.
Oh, wow.
And so in the first week of writing spoken word poetry, I wrote both those pieces. And if you look at my journals, they're pretty much just straight through. There's not like crossing things out and things. It's just kind of like channeled through. And then I have this very different approach to creativity because I do the Unlocking Your Inner Artist course, and I have this different approach to the process where I feel like it's not a matter of sitting down and forcing yourself to do it. It's a matter of connecting to the frequency of the idea that wants to come through you.
Okay.
And learning how to do that, and then when you're doing that, it'll flow through. And so by utilizing that and that approach, when I hit like writer's block, I'm like, I just can't figure out how to end this poem. I can't figure out. I had a piece of poetry that I could not figure out how to end for about a month, and I just was trying to because I was so close. And I finally realized the end is not in me yet. Like I'm not yet the frequency matched to the ending of this piece of poetry. And so I left it at home, and I went and traveled for 8 weeks and went to Tanzania with Preston and Alexi and did all that. And after that experience, I came back home and I looked at it and I had it done within a week.
Wow.
And so there's a deep level of trust in this process of being a vessel for these ideas and for these words to flow through. Like literally now, before we started this, I think to myself, may I be the space for whatever want to come through me to come through. May I get out of the way.
Wow.
And that's how I live my life. That's how I create. And so the one-man show was exactly the same thing. I decided I wanted to do a one-man show. I wanted to do it. I had no idea what that was going to look like. None. And I just said, I'm going to do it. And I started out.
What made you want to do a one-man show?
The challenge?
Yeah.
Like it makes me super nervous.
Okay.
It's something that is, there's nothing else. There's no second takes. There's no anything. Like it's just me on stage.
Yeah.
And what I've designed with permission to think freely is a show that's I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And the final piece of the show, the ending, I didn't have until the week of the world premiere.
Really?
The week of the world premiere, I had everything except how to end it. And again, that deep level of trust of it's just the ending's not in me. It's not in me yet. And I just go into my process, my meditation and everything that I know around the creative process, and just trust that it will show up when I'm ready. And that's not how a lot of people work.
No.
And it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But I'm so proud of that show.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your acting career. So I'm not sure what you've done,
Okay.
but can you tell us a little bit about how that, are you still acting?
I am still acting, although differently, because I'm acting on my own terms. So like you can IMDb me for things that I've done, but I've done some TV and film and stuff. And the difference is after I had kind of my awakening, I started to recognize the power of media and what it was doing. I think I watched, you know those movies, The Purge?
Yes.
So I don't watch TV, but I love sports. And so there was the NBA finals, and I was actually like committed to these games and watching these games, and it was the only time that I really had watched TV in forever. And the commercials were for this movie. And one of the things, they show like someone about to get their throat cut, and so graphically right up until the moment that you know what just happened.
Yeah.
And I had a dream about it, and I recognized all of this media is creating the idea of what's possible. So literally, if you don't think something's possible, it can't manifest.
Right.
And that's on the positive end and the negative end of the spectrum. When that Saw came out, I loved Saw at the time, and then I'm recognizing now that just created a whole wider pool of negative and harm that is possible for people to now do because they see that that's a possibility.
Right.
And so I was really struggling with most of what was on TV and in the movies. And so I decided to take a hiatus from the whole industry, and then came back after my whole spiritual awakenings and traveling, and just felt so called to coming back to acting. I left and took a break from acting for probably like 18 months.
Okay.
18 months to 2 years. And I really got clear that I love acting and I love filmmaking, and I don't have any interest in perpetuating fear. That's the bottom line of my evaluation. We love and fear and love and fear in these questions of where on that spectrum that we are, and I have no interest in widening that pool of fear.
Okay.
And I want to be in projects that help shape a new, more loving reality, and that's a very small percentage of projects. Alignment is the most important thing. Who you are being is more important than what you are doing.
Wow.
And that is a huge facet of what I believe and what I coach and teach.
Who you are being is more important than what you are doing. Wow. Thank you.
You're
for
welcome.
That. Like, right?
Yeah, fully.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, who you are being is more important than what you're doing. Basically, any action you take comes out of who you are. And so when we talk about law of attraction, when we talk about manifestation, what we're actually talking about is a law of magnetism. And we get lost in this idea that we got to go out there and like go and get it, instead of recognizing our job is to be the frequency with which it will magnetize to us. And so who you are being will magnetize everything that is in alignment with who you are being. That means if you're not being someone that is can run a $200 million business, you will not run a $200 million business. So you could do all the actions that you want to take, that you think someone running a $200 million business would take, and simultaneously, you're not the match for it.
Right.
So things just, and it looks like things just not going well. It looks like, oh, that just didn't fall my way.
Yeah.
And it's not coincidence. It's not coincidence, it's alignment. It's about bringing these things in as a match.
Wow.
Anything that's in my life that is showing up in a way that I'm not crazy about means that there's something in me that it's reflecting back. There's something in me that's a match to that.
Yes.
And so my role is not to change that. My role is to change this.
Right.
My job is to do whatever work that allows me to remove the limiting beliefs, the fears, the doubt. Like if you have a belief that you're not smart enough, you can take action that your motivational coach tells you to take. Yeah, just go and do it, just go and do it. But what's happening now is every step of that process is a battle.
Yeah.
Literally every single time that you have to do something new, you're battling with the part of yourself that thinks you're not smart enough. So you can fight tooth and nail along the way, but why not just say, okay, well, why don't I focus on that so that that whole process doesn't become a fight? It becomes so seamless and easy because we are abundance.
Yes.
We are like whatever we want, like that's who we are by nature. And so like corks, our nature is to float to the top. And we're tethered and we're pulled down underwater by all our fears and doubts and all the times that our parents told us this and whatever. We take that on and it pulls us down. Our job is not to try and like pull the cork back up. Our job is to cut the things that are weighing the cork down anyway, and our natural state will reveal itself.
So, how would you advise someone to go about changing their mentality towards gaining more abundance or matching the frequency of what they want to attract more of in their lives?
I think that to change your mentality, it comes back to consciousness. So we use this word consciousness. Consciousness is synonymous to me with awareness, okay? And awareness gives us choice. You can't change something you're unaware of.
Right.
So the first step is becoming aware of it.
Okay.
So how do you become aware of something? Awareness is the equivalent in my opinion, of knowledge. Knowledge gives us awareness, and awareness gives us choice. And knowledge we can find any way that you would go and get knowledge traditionally, which is by going and reading a book, talking to people, listening to podcasts, watching videos, and experiential of applying it all. And that's the biggest disconnect I see for people right now. And what I was talking to you about is how I dove all 110% in and acquired so much knowledge in such a short period of time. And that knowledge gave me awareness to look at my life through new lenses, and that awareness gave me choice. And the biggest disconnect I see right now is people are like listening to this right now, or listening to my podcast or whatever, and they're getting the awareness of a different way of seeing things, and then they're not making the choices. And that's the difference between a logical understanding and embodiment. Because our body, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how our body is our unconscious mind. So it is the reflection of our unconscious mind. And to get embodiment is the equivalent of getting it into the unconscious, so that you don't even have to think about it. Like, I just show up as love unconsciously.
Okay.
The conscious mind had to keep playing and keep making choices until it became embodied, it became unconscious. But if you're not making those choices, it will never become embodied. And so that's the biggest disconnect. There's plenty of information. You can get your spiritual teachings from anyone. You could go to Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins, Preston Smiles. You can get it from me. It doesn't matter. If you're not making the choices that are different, you're not going to get different results.
Makes perfect sense. It does. Coming from you. So, wow. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So, your deep dive podcast. How did you come up with that concept? And why did you want to make a podcast?
Yeah, so the Deep Dive podcast I love podcasts. One of my favorite podcasts is the Joe Rogan Experience. I listen to that podcast all the time.
Joe Rogan, okay.
I listen to podcasts when I work out. I listen to podcasts when I drive. Like, I'm listening to podcasts more than I listen to music. And I recognized one day that I was having these types of conversations all the time. Like, my friend group had turned into one that these conversations were normal. There was no more small talk. It was like, what's the meaning of life?
Yeah.
And so I also recognize, like, these type of conversations, and why I'm so excited that we're having this is because it's giving people who may not normally have this type of conversation to be a fly on the wall for it.
Yes.
And that was the inspiration for the deep dive. I said, I believe inherently that human beings will choose love if given the choice. I started it because I just wanted to give people more choice. I want to empower people. I don't feel that we have to agree. It's not about what we think, it's how we think. And if people can start thinking about, I'm empowered, I'm creating my reality, and I can choose love in this moment and every other moment, I have that choice, then the world is going to shift drastically.
Wow. I love that podcast.
Thank
Check
you.
it out. Deep Dive Podcast.
The Deep Dive with Adam Roa.
It's legit.
Thank you.
Music.
Music.
Top 3 artists you're listening to right now.
That I'm listening to right now. Number 1 is Nako and Medicine for the People. I am such a huge fan of his music, and just the way that he, I feel like, embodies and encapsulates what we're all feeling. I'm a huge fan of playlists, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And I love discovering new music and creating my own playlists.
Okay.
But I would say I've recently found a love for, I don't know what the type of music's called. It's not trap music, but like deep bass and dance. I like MC Yogi. Do you know who MC Yogi is?
Yes.
I love MC Yogi.
I went to Wanderlust and I experienced MC Yogi.
Yeah.
once.
When Nako was playing too?
No.
Okay. But so MC Yogi, I'm a huge fan. I appreciate what he's doing and conscious rap. And then I love rap too. So there's a lot of, one of my favorite, Pusha T, actually. Pusha T
All right.
is someone who recently has been, there's just been a couple times, so whenever I'm writing a new spoken word piece, I'll know that something wants to come through because all of a sudden I'm listening to a lot of rap. Like that, when I go through this phase where I just want to listen to rap, and I'll listen and I'll hear a new rhyme scheme and it'll catch my ear in a way, and I was like, whoa, and that'll inspire something. And so Pusha T twice has done that, so I gotta give him credit if he's listening. Pusha T, thank you. Also like Macklemore. Do you know who Hopsin is? Hopsin is a rap artist who also raps about just different things, and there's some consciousness in it that is just really impressive. If you can put consciousness and meaning and message into music and do it in a way that is entertaining and dope musically, I'm a fan.
Top 3 artists of all time.
The Beatles.
Okay.
The Beatles, 100%. Nako makes that list for me. I just love Nako. And then I know that you don't like this one, but I'm gonna go with Eminem. I just think that lyrically, he did something that I had and continues to do stuff with lyrics that I just cannot wrap my head around.
Yeah.
And so I just appreciate that art so much.
No, he gets that. He gets that prop all day long. It's just back in the day, I wasn't a fan.
Yeah,
all
definitely.
good, but he gets.
But I was an angry teenager, so it was
okay.
perfect for me.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now that makes sense. Okay, last question.
Yeah.
If you had one message for the world, what would it be?
You are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. All day, every day, even when you think you're not.
Amen to that. Thank you very much, Adam Roa. Appreciate you so much.
You are
for
so
just
welcome.
being here.
You're so welcome. Thank you for coming down here. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for putting stuff like this out, because you are literally giving people more choice in their life.
I appreciate that. Thank you for what you do, because I wouldn't be here if you didn't do what you did. So thank you. Keep doing it. It's amazing. Please check Adam Roa out. You want to tell the world how they can find you?
AdamRoa.com, ADAMROA.com, Adam.Roa on Instagram, Adam Roa on Facebook.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. For Vybez. Water is life. I know this is true, because if I don't drink, I'll die, but that's a different knowing than because I drink, I live. Give it a minute to let it sink in, because when it clicks, then it shifts all your thinking. Because I drink, I live. Means my ability to speak the words that you're hearing, and your ability to see me and hear them have been made possible by water. Your mother, your father, your sons, and your daughters made possible by water. Not an exaggeration to say all of creation made possible by water. And so common sense would indicate that protecting this foundational building block of our world is a necessity. A necessity. And we should feel blessed to be growing on a planet that addresses the list of demands, creating messes we can't understand, like we test to see how much we can take before we're reprimanded. Well, we're being reprimanded. What we're seeing in the land is letting us know if we keep biting the hand that feeds us, soon we'll have to go. That means all of us, not just some of us. So someone tell me, please, what is it we are fighting for? What is it we are fighting for? To stop polluting the air and the ocean floor? There are dead animals washing up on the ocean shore. They can't even go outside in China without a mask on anymore. We're trading our oxygen for the processed foods in our grocery stores. And that iPhone 12, it's dope for sure, but if it can't breathe and drink for you, it won't be what you're hoping for. So what is it we are fighting for? This disease of greed breeds enemies to the very air we breathe. They chop down trees to feed their needs, and they don't care that our mother bleeds, because she bleeds black blood. And so when that oil comes, they only cut more deep, and they build their pipelines to wherever's cheap, and they don't care that the pipelines leak and seep into our rivers and our creeks. Are they unaware that our mother weeps? Well, we hear her cries now. Yeah, she's louder than their lies now. And so with gratitude in our hearts for the indigenous people who were the first to start and who led the way, we're a movement now. And politicians know it now, that's why they're fearing this, hiding in their White Houses, golden towers, hearing this, leaving them stuck in the money grab, delirious. Let's hope it snaps them out of the money, minds them that's human. Because it's scary, this experiment, seeing how far we can be pushed, how many times we'll keep turning the other cheek, and how long we'll keep covering our eyes. But we've run out of cheeks to turn, and our third eye can't go blind. So So we see through the games they play, we let them win for the last time. A paradigm shift is underway, and the new rules are old as time. We will protect the land because land grows life from the mountains down into the core. We will protect the air because air breathes life and allows our birds to soar. And we'll protect clean water because water is life. And life is what we're fighting for. Water is life.
When the idea of Vybez first came to me, I remember thinking, there's no way on God's green earth I'm putting this idea out there. It felt like a dope idea for a show that I really wanted to put out there, but I had a lot of stories, a lot of fear, a lot of things that were just in the way of putting myself out there. So growing up, I'm Jamaican, so growing up in that culture and in my household, my parents were really strict. There's a saying that goes in a nursery rhyme that I learned growing up that says, speak when you're spoken to and only answer when you're called. And that was pretty much the essence of my childhood. My parents didn't really encourage, like, put yourself out there, be bold, be courageous, like, express yourself, you know, in a way that feels comfortable for you. Because I was just that type of child that was just quiet and to myself, and I had a very tumultuous childhood, so I didn't really feel safe growing up in putting myself out there. Interestingly enough, when I was like 11 or 12, there's this show that I used to watch called Rappin', and it was the dopest show. I remember seeing it as a kid, and it was hosted by this woman named Lisa Hanna. And Lisa Hanna is a very popular Jamaican icon. She became Miss Jamaica, and then she entered the Miss World pageant and became Miss World. And she also went to my school, Queens High, which is an all-girls school in Jamaica. And I remember, because she was that close to me, so I was able to see her, but also see her out there in the world just doing what she loved. And she hosted this program, and I remember seeing her host this program, talking to a lot of just these artists and entertainers and being really good at it. And I said to myself, I really want to be just like her. I want to be able to entertain and like connect with people and talk to artists about their art. I just remember thinking in my being, like, I can do that. That's what I want to do with my life. So at some point in time, I did pursue that. I did a little bit of modeling and some acting, and was pursuing, you know, a career in hosting. When I moved to California, I was like 18 from Philadelphia. I did radio broadcasting school, and I remember thinking, like, this is it. So in pursuing it, I didn't really quite get anywhere with it, and I decided at some point in time in my early 20s that entertainment was just not for me. And instead, I was like, what can I do? I can help people. I want to help people in some way, because entertainment wasn't really working out. Over the years, I still had it in the back of my mind, like, I could still do that. I would see programs and see people actually hosting and entertaining people. And I'm like, I still would love to do that. I still can do that. But I already made my choice that that was not the route I was going to go. A few years ago, I was going through a really challenging time in my life. I was actually going through a separation. And I remember thinking, like, this is not the way I saw my life to be, you know? I thought I was just I had a plan already for my life. And it didn't quite work out that way. And through those challenging times, this idea of Vybez came up, because I was watching a lot of inspirational content, Shannon Kaiser, Alexi Panos, you know, Preston Smiles. I was watching a lot of inspirational videos. And also, too, I was listening to a lot of music. I remember thinking, ooh, what if I just made inspirational content, right? Still that idea of like hosting something and like being on camera and like putting myself out there was still there. And I was like, inspirational content, people love inspirational content. I could do that. I saw myself in these people that were doing these inspirational videos. And also with the music piece, I discovered a band called The Internet through a friend of mine. And at the time, I didn't think music was really very good. So when I heard this band, I was like, oh, I relate to them, because I wanted something to relate to the challenging times that I was going through. And I wasn't really hearing music that I could relate to until I heard of the internet. And I remember asking people like, oh, have you heard about this band? Because I listened to them for months. Their album, The Ego Death, is a dope album. And I rocked it for months. And I remember talking to a bunch of different people about it, and like nobody had really heard of the band, The Internet. So I was like, well, what if I made a show and talked about this band and also incorporate inspirational content? It's like, that sounds dope. So that's where the idea of Vybez was born. But again, I had my stories from childhood that I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to put myself out there. So there's no way that was happening. But I remember the idea just kept bugging. It just kept saying, you can do this, Peta. Like, this is what you've wanted to do since you were 11 or 12. So do it. What you resist does persist, and it wouldn't leave me alone. So I said, okay, I'm gonna give it a try, see where this goes. And I remember booking my first interview with a dancer, and a few days before the interview, she canceled. And I remember thinking, I'm not gonna get discouraged. I'm gonna just keep going, I'm gonna keep trying. And I tried to book a few other people, and it just wasn't working out. And I'm a firm believer that what is meant for you will be for you, right? If we say yes to it. So yes, I said yes to it, but I needed help. And I just, in my frustrations, I was like, universe, show me the way, because this is not working. And if you show me the way, then I can, probably get somewhere with this, but I don't know where to go, what to do. I know nothing about production, about camera work, about anything of the sort. So show me the way. Shortly after just being frustrated and putting it out there, this guy named Rasta Yogi, who's on my first Vybez show, he came into my experience because I saw him a few weeks prior to this meditation that I had, and he was on either Allstate or State Farm. It was an insurance commercial for Black History Month, and I thought his storyline was that he was a football player turned yoga instructor. And I thought that was the most interesting story that I ever heard. I was like, wow, he would make a dope interview. I'd love to interview that guy. But not really thinking like, I really want to interview that guy, because he lived in Florida. And so when he came into my experience, I was like, universe, he lives in Florida. Like, that's not gonna work. Like, why would you, why would he even come into my existence? And lo and behold, maybe a week later, he posts on Instagram that he's going to be in LA. We're hosting a workshop in Beverly Hills. And I was like, no way, universe. Did this man decide to come to LA to have a workshop? And I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this, because this was divinely led, and I'm saying yes to this, so let's go. I was like, you provided the answer that I needed, so if this is the case, I'm gonna follow this, see where it goes. So I go to this workshop in Beverly Hills. I meet Rasta Yogi, aka DJ Townsel, and I say, hey, will you do an interview? I was nervous as hell, but he was like, yes. And I said, oh my God, this is happening. So I did the interview with him, and do I remember anything that happened in that interview? No idea. But at the end of that, I just remember thinking, wow. I just remember the feeling like, this is exactly what I was meant to do. This is the feeling that I had since I was 11 or 12 years old, knowing that this is what I wanted to do with my life. And so at the end of that, I was like, this is it, we're doing this. I said yes, and I was just so thankful that the universe provided a way. So I believe that what is meant for you will be for you. I know there's a lot of people out there that just have this medicine on their hearts, and they want to do their passion and their purpose, but they're just afraid. There's a lot of people that are afraid, or have the stories, or whatever the case is. But you get to say yes. You get to say yes to that. You get to say yes to your passion, whatever you want to birth and put into the world. A lot of people are just afraid. They're just afraid to put themselves out there, like I was with Vybez. But it's for you. You don't get to die with this medicine in you. It doesn't serve you with it still being in you. You get to put it out there into the world. The world needs it. So you get to say yes to that. And if it's a matter of just being afraid to put yourself out there, then guess what? I got news for you. You get to take the fear with you. This amazing woman, Raw Goddess, introduced that whole concept to me of like feeling the fear and taking it with you anyway. I met her at a conference, and I remember telling her after filming the Rasta Yogi interview, because I was still fearful of just putting it out there, because that means I get to put myself out there, I get to be seen, and I was still not having it. Those stories were still running my whole experience with Vybez, and I remember telling her I'm so afraid to put it out there, I'm afraid to put myself out there, and she just said, you get to feel the fear and do it anyway. She's like, take it with you, take the fear with you. So I'm sharing that with you all. Take the fear. If it's fear that's stopping you from doing what is on your heart, you get to take that fear with you. You get to share that gift with the world. Don't die with your gifts still inside of you. The world needs it. And there's nothing like Vybez to teach me that. And of course, I still have my challenges all the time with Vybez, but I couldn't be happier because I'm living my passion and my purpose. And Vybez is for me, and I get to say yes, and so do you. Peta Vaughan here for Vybez. Thanks for vibing with Peta. I'll see you next time on Vybez.